acknowledging that we're on Whadjuk Noongar country. Pay my respect to elders past, present and future. Particularly I'd like to thank Marie Taylor, who's talking at this time, for her welcome to country this morning. Just acknowledge the presence of people with traditional owners with strong connection to this place, like Marie, Vanessa, Brenda Larson and Glenda Kickett. And also other Noongar traditional owners who are here, such as Gail, and traditional owners who are from further away, including Robin, and apologies if I've missed anyone. So go back. So a key concept that underlies the talk today is the concept of coexistence. So coexistence is the persistence of Indigenous peoples' customary rights to, along with their claims upon and contemporary uses of, lands, waters and natural resources in their customary domains within imposed systems of governance. So it's the coexistence of traditional law, but also rights and continuing connections. The challenge that Vanessa and I are going to speak to is how do we practice coexistence by acknowledging and respecting Indigenous experiences of space and place as foundational for just, sustainable and equitable land and water management. And this is it's a real problem. It's a real problem, these issues of coexistence. And part of this is that what Anne Paulina calls first law, and I'll kind of come back to that, these ideas of traditional law and connection and continues to be hard to recognise for European Australian systems of land management and research. And for as long as this is the case, as long as it's difficult for the managers of places and the systems we've got to work with this coexistence of traditional law, then the co-management of Perth's precious waters is not possible, and there's substantial risk to traditional owners when they come to be asked about their traditional knowledge. So what are some of the problems that we kind of can see when coexistence is not taken into account around kind of processes of consultation of land management? Well, traditional owners can become informants rather than experts and the holders of Indigenous cultural and intellectual property. They can be separated off from the knowledge. And this weakens elders' perspectives on what the knowledge is. It takes it out of context. And then it can lead to misinterpretation of that knowledge. And even beyond that, when traditional knowledge is taken away from or outside of the community structures where it's passed on and held and nurtured, then that process of using traditional knowledge becomes a form of recolonising. It weakens the self-determination and the identity of those communities because they can see that knowledge off there and it's not part of that community structure in the way it should be. So today Vanessa and I are going to talk about how these issues are being addressed in a research project that we're involved with a group of Swan River elders that focuses on a catchment and surrounds in Midland. That's the Blackadder Woodbridge catchment, Blackadder Creek and Woodbridge Creek. And where we want to get to is this question of how can water research support Noongar futurity and resurgence? How can research and management be part of projects that support sustainable Noongar life and livelihoods on river country? So this is the project. It was reconnecting to our rivers. We've now decided that wasn't going to work because Vanessa and traditional owners have always had a connection, so it's connecting to our rivers. The primary funder for this project is the Fellman Foundation. They gave us the impetus to start it and to kind of begin this journey. We also have some funding from the City of Swan who are coming on board as well. It's really good to see. I'd also like to acknowledge the Blackadder Woodbridge Catchment Group, who have long had relationships with the elders we're working with for a couple of decades, even longer, and have shown great respect and for the traditional owners of the catchment. So this is the project team, and the project's co-led by Vanessa and me, and Vanessa will talk later on about her connections to this place and explain that. So I'm a non-Aboriginal, kind of Anglo-European Australian geographer. I've really come to this work through a process of working with different communities on heritage and landscape issues, and then building up a relationship with the Centre for Aboriginal Studies at Curtin, and developing what I hope are good relationships with the people there. So, as part of our governance structure for this project, we have an elders group, and this is a picture of the elders group, and we've done three yarning workshops, and the second one was an extended bus trip, and so this is the group overlooking the WA Wetlands, and we also have a steering committee to help guide us and ensure that we're making good decisions. And this is where the catchment is, the Blackadder Woodbridge catchment. I know Alan's in the audience. One thing that's important to realise with these kinds of projects is that drawing a boundary around something like this doesn't work when you're working with in a space of coexistence. And so, because the connections are much broader than this, the kinds of places we're looking at also involve the Helena River. They can spread out to the Scarp as well and move back also to the west. And a bit of that surrounds some of the things that Christina and Gail and Emma and Glenda were talking about around, there's been the movements of people from between places and different locations. And so this all needs to be taken into account. But I also want to acknowledge, just the strong connections that the elders group and Noongar people have through this area. So this is from the officially the Aboriginal Heritage inventory system. So this is the stuff that's there. But of course, there's also a lot more there that's held in community, and that's nurtured by the families who have these long and ongoing connections to this place. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because I think most people here are familiar with integrated catchment planning and management, and some of the issues that are raised in urban areas, some of the ways that fragmentation can occur around, whether it's around these issues of tenure or whether it's across the kind of governance structures and the number of organisations that are involved in catchment management. But as has been said a few times today, there is a strong desire within planning and natural resource management for engaging with Aboriginal people and culture and their practices. But then there's, I think at this stage where we're up to at the moment, is this question of working through, well, what does it mean to work with traditional owners, to work with these communities that have these deep connections with these places, and to do it in ways that don't weaken those connections, but actually are part of these community processes of self-determination and of resurgence. There's a few concepts I just want to come back to here that have kind of helped me start to understand the kinds of perspectives that can be taken into account here. Part of this is working with our elder group too. They've been very strong on having a Swan River ontology of place and so on. But it's also, I found it useful to, in my readings, to to have a look at these concepts as well. So the first quote up there is by Anne Paulina, working with in an article that's actually authored by the Martuwarra Fitzroy River, the River of Life. And so Anne is a Ninkana researcher, and she's living up in the Kimberley, and she writes about first law. And she writes that first law is the values, ethics and rules for living in harmony with nature and our fellow non-human beings. These rules are the codes of conduct necessary to maintain balance and harmony with each other and with country. And she connects this with living waters. So living waters is enmeshed with human health and well-being. Living waters are connected physically and spiritually in each buru or country, including connections that run through the earth and aquifers. Thus, the management of rivers, billabongs, springs, soaks, floodplains and aquifers are all connected and based on reciprocal relationships. So these are definitions with relevance to Noongar country, but this, of course, is from Ninkana country. So the use of that word buru is important because that is based in where Anne's from. There's also, and our elders bring their own perspectives, their own interpretations to this understanding of the relatedness of these places. There are also writings by that bring Noongar perspectives to these kinds of connections, and these Len Collard and Sandra Harbin have written about an integrated approach that connects Budja or country, Mort, which is blood or family, and Cardigan or knowledge. They write about how these three things are intertwined and cannot be separated. I think that's beginning to get to kind of the kinds of issues that Western science has when it comes to working with Aboriginal communities, with the attempts to separate these things out. There's also Collard, Len again, working with Dave Palmer, has written about 9 Noongar design thematic narratives. So we have work around the place now that's beginning to bring a Noongar perspective to how to do these kinds of processes. So I think to finish up my part of the talk, I'm going to finish with this question of how can we move towards decolonising integrated planning and management for urban catchments, in particular in research on these projects in the Swan region. And hopefully there you get a kind of broader sense of the kinds of issues that exist here, and that we need new approaches, we need new ways of working with community, ways that are deeply respectful and culturally appropriate.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Todd. I'd just like to acknowledge that we're on Midjiguru's lands, Bilia country, and I just want to also say that this is the first time I've been to the Wetlands Centre, and I'm a traditional owner, a Wajak woman, and I just walked out the back there and I just saw all these beautiful big old ancient balga trees, and I was just blown away of how beautiful it is here. And I'd like to thank all the wetland people for having such a beautiful place and protecting our country here. So Kaya Wanju to my talk, and there we go. Yes, so as I was saying, I am a traditional woman from country here. A lot of the issues that we've just heard, I'm well and truly involved in a lot of those issues over country, and so heritage is something that has been very much part of my family and myself. And yeah, those issues of being called in to do a Section 18 when a part of your country is being proposed to be developed is one of the hardest things that a traditional person can ever do on their country. And trying to voice your concerns around that is very hard, because half the time we really are really trying to fight with institutions within our city that don't really value our culture too much. But what I wanted to do with my talk is I wanted to talk about some of the things that we were doing in our project. And as the co-lead, one of the things that I've been really pushing my team to do when working with our traditional owners is we look at a best practice of how we engage traditional owners on country. So as part of the target group of people that we've actually targeted in the research is actually trying to engage with traditional owners that actually have been those people that have been in a lot of those heritage reports over country. So getting them engaged in this research, which is quite different to when you're looking at, Section 18 where you're called in and you give your information and then they go away and make all these recommendations. I hope our research isn't going to be like that, and I keep sort of pushing that. And so these are the challenges we have. But in saying that, when we talk about reconciliation, I do want to acknowledge the good work of the people in the room here and some of the people on my team. And we do have some good reports from non-Indigenous people across our country that has done some excellent work. And we need to remember those reports. We need to remember the work that they've already previously done, and we need to continue that work and see how we can implement that as we move along in our work. So, as we all know, we've got thousands of wetlands across our country, and we're just looking at a little pilot study of Blackadder Creek, and ours is connecting to Rivers Research. This research is not isolated. And when you work within Indigenous culture, you'll come to understand that all country is related, underground, above ground, but also into the sky. So there is these layers of understanding that are very deep, and they're very deep in culture. And there's something that, if you're privileged to work in that space, you will come to understand. But our Whadjuk people have always been advocating for their country. I think we can't stand here today and say that they haven't, because, you know, my father, Albert Corunna, the late Albert Corunna, he was often speaking up for country, and so was many other Aboriginal men and women across our country here in Perth. They've always been talking about country. The waterways have always been important to them, and a lot of the things in which has been presented so far are things that aren't new to us and things that are very much talked about in our culture. So one of the biggest issues, I think, for me as a traditional woman, but for us as all of us sitting in the room, is how quick Perth is being cleared. The country is just being cleared at a really rapid rate, and you know, how do we look at trying to protect country? Because it really is about us all protecting country together. It isn't just an Aboriginal issue; it is everyone's issue, because we're all living on the country together, and so we really need to be working together. One of the methods that we've applied in our research, and our research is quite new, we've just started doing our research last year, so we're still, you know, analysing data, thinking about it, looking at it, reflecting on our practices and how we work with the community. But we've applied an Indigenous yarning method, and so we, as Todd was just speaking about just then, we've actually had several yarning sessions with these traditional owner people. And part of that yarning is, the first yarn was about actually finding out, well, I guess it's about us sharing what we want to do with the community, making sure that they understand what we're doing, but also listening to the community, understanding where they're coming from, where they've been, and you know, where this research we hope is going. Some of the photos here show some of those yarning sessions that we've been having with our traditional owners in Midland. Also out on country there, Guildford Park is one of the important places down the bottom there. A lot of our traditional owners, including my father, they sat there many times talking about native title on this country when they were actually collecting, you know, gathering all their evidence to prove that connection to country. So some of these areas are really important. Success Hill up there where it says Woggle Dreaming, that's where my grandmother was born in 1898. So that's my connection here to the Swan River. So I want to acknowledge that, you know, in some parts of Australia, in Western Australia and Western Australia, we've had Aboriginal people that have continuously been managing and looking after country. And we do have Indigenous protected areas. So, you know, that needs to be recognised too. And so there's been a lot of good work across our country in trying to make sure that we're looking after our waterways and country. And I'd like to say that our ancestors would be very proud of all this really good work from our countrymen and the non-Indigenous community, science community and educators and people that work within that space of looking after country. And so that's true reconciliation, and I think a lot of people don't even get to know some of the really good work that's happening. I mean, right now in my country here in Whadjuk country, as a traditional owner, you know, I often get calls all the time. And, you know, where my parents live, not far there, Helena River, there's a little spot in the Helena River, and they're actually working at doing some really good work at protecting our waterways and putting back the natural bush there. I've got a quote there from Noongar senior man Rod Garlett, who's from Northam, and he's saying that when we work alongside our elders, as young people, we can achieve anything, and that's true. If we go about things in the right way with the right protocol and making sure that we speak to the right people and do the right thing, and our intention for country is really strong at doing a really good thing with country, I think we can go a long way and we can achieve a lot of things. There's a little link there you might want to go and have a look at. I was involved in that project, and that's with the Water Corporation. And that was a really good project, another good way of allowing Aboriginal people to articulate that strong connection to country. And in that painting there is the woggle, which was already mentioned in the previous presentation. Buffers have already been mentioned, and I want to make special mention of it because it's one of the things that we often talk about when we are being consulted on country. So there's been really good reports. This one here, 1983, is a government report. It's online, people can look at it. It actually provides recommendations, some really good recommendations about how we can actually push to have these 50-metre buffers, happening around our waterways. And as a traditional owner, we would like that happening all around those waterways. So we create these really nice big park systems across our country so that our animals and our water life can live, and travel across the country, because again, that's very important to our country because totems are a part of our religion, and that's that connection with country. This is one of the Wajak men, senior men that is involved in our study, and his name is Herbert Bruffo, and I think that this quote from him sort of gives a good indicator of how important it is that we actually have these natural corridors happening right across our country. Our birds are having trouble finding their way home. So I think that's really important that we look at trying to plan for our future together and make it a better place for everyone so we can all enjoy our country. I've been staying with my mum who's 84 years old, and I just love it because she's got a beautiful big wandoo tree and a Maori tree in her place, and we've got all these beautiful birds that come and sing every morning, and I just think, gee, isn't that lovely? That's really paradise. So it really is important that we actually honour country that way. One of the things that we've also been really strong on and that I've really been pushing in the research is that we look at building good relationships with everyone that we're in touch with. So those good relationships are about, being respectful and building relationships that are really sustainable and long-lasting. And also thinking about, well, what sort of benefits could we actually do in our research that's going to actually benefit the community, not just go in there, take information and go and leave and not actually do anything. I think we want to actually do something that's going to be really life-changing and long-lasting for everyone. I would just like to lastly do some acknowledgements. We've been very fortunate to have really, really good people in our team. And as a traditional owner, I would like to thank the water scientists in the room and all the educators and everyone that is protecting my Wajak country along with me, because a lot of the work that we've done in our country, and I grew up here, I was born here, so I lived in Perth all my life, so I've seen the change across the landscape, and hasn't been possible without the help of our non-Indigenous community. So that's true reconciliation, and it's the stories that you won't hear at a conference. These are stories that are happening right on the ground right now where people are walking together to look after the land. But I would like to acknowledge Professor Phil Jennings, Denise and the team for the Wetland Conference, because I think it is a really good thing, and I like it that there's a space made now for Noongar people to come in and talk about our wetlands. I think that's really a good thing. I would also like to make special mention of the the Wetland Atlas of 1996. And my late father, Albert Corunna, and my mother, Gwen Corunna, and my Whadjuk people want to also especially acknowledge the excellent work of Dr. Alan Hill, who's sitting in the audience, for his long contribution in recognising the possibilities of long-term protection and sustainability of our waterways. But also, I think it's the respectful conversations that we can have with each other, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, in looking after our country together. That's really important. Dr. Alan Hill has, the wetlands. He's shown that the wetlands and waterways can be protected through policy and water-sensitive design. So I want to encourage everyone here to, I've got a couple of hats that I'm wearing, a traditional owner hat and a Curtin University hat, but I'm always pushing the agenda wherever I can about how we can work together and actually look after country. And thank you.
So just very quickly to finish. You're good. Just got a few things. So what this project is about is to developing a holistic approach to the conservation of historic river landscapes and community development. Through finding ways to articulate a shared vision that can take into account the kinds of protocols and processes that we need to come to a kind of a positive and kind of sustainable form of coexistence between the different laws and forms of management that there are in urban areas. So we've had the 3 workshops, the yarning workshops, as Vanessa's mentioned, and we've got kind of directions from them and have been talking about next steps. And some of the next steps are up there now, and so we're trying now, I think, to move to a stage of where we've been building relationships and talking to now kind of working together on specific initiatives that have been defined by the elders and the elder group. Okay, so thank you very much for listening, and look forward to sharing more about this project in future Wetlands conferences. Thank you.